Hi, everybody. Shavua Tov. You are listening to Eve Harrow on Rejuvenation for the Land of Israel Network. I know you all missed me last week, but Jeremy insisted that we get a vacation on Pesach, at least from the radio show. So here I am back, after what I had a beautiful Chag, and I hope that all of you who celebrated Pesach, wherever you are in the world, also did. But it is the start of a new week and ready to roll. I am out on a plane tomorrow morning. But before that, I wanted to put out today's show. I'm sitting with Rabbi Reuven Tarragon in Alon Shvut in Gush Etzion. Rabbi Tarragon is the Dean of Overseas Students at Yeshivat HaKotel, one of the flagship yeshivas, Torah seminaries in Jerusalem, but also very involved with Mizrahi. What is Mizrahi? We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. And the program that I am heading out to be a participant in, 70 for 70, celebrating Israel's 70th birthday, the State of Israel's 70th birthday, with speakers going all over North America. So thank you, Rabbi Tarragon, for joining me today. Another beautiful day in the land of Israel.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the beginning of a beautiful summer. Please God, and it's great to sit with you and great to be working with you on this program.
Okay, so tell my listeners, they've heard me, I've mentioned it over the last couple of weeks. What is this program? And you're heading out as well.
Right. I'm going to be going with you to Los Angeles and sharing a panel with you on Sunday, please God. And my wife, Shani, is going to be in Florida. Please God, she's heading out the end of the week as well. The program is in honor of Israel's 70th anniversary. They're sending, actually, it turns out to be over 70 speakers to shuls around North America. It's up to 80 by now. There are also a number of speakers going to other destinations besides North America, besides the United States, going to Canada, going to England, Australia, South Africa, and other places, to speak about Israel in anticipation of this very special milestone. Even though Israel is important to all of us and we think about it all the time, we need to deepen our relationship with Israel as much as possible wherever we are in the world.
So which organization is behind this? What is the RZA, Religious Zionists of America, Mizrahi? Are they the same thing? Because sometimes you have an organization that's in Israel and in the United States, obviously have to be different because of where they're based. Being a Zionist in Israel is a little bit different than being a Zionist outside of Israel. But in terms of the administration, in terms of the organization that is also putting quite a bit of money into this and subsidizing a bunch of us heading out. So what is Mizrahi?
So Mizrahi is the oldest religious Zionist organization. It's over 100 years old. It was started as part of the Zionist movement already in Europe to represent those who believe as part of their religion in Zionism as a major component, religious Zionism. And so Mizrahi was very involved in facilitating the founding of the State of Israel, bringing people to Israel and building religious institutions in the State of Israel. So World Mizrahi today is headed by Rav Doron Perez, who is pushing these kinds of initiatives all over the world. And there are the local Mizrahis in different countries. So since we're talking about the United States, the RZA, Religious Zionists of America, which has also been around for a long time, not as long as the World Mizrahi. And we're constantly looking for ways to rejuvenate and reinstill these ideas in new generations. And each of those organizations, World Mizrahi and the RZA, have put considerable amount of money into subsidizing these programs and are looking forward to continue running not only these kinds of programs, but other kinds of initiatives to strengthen people's relationship with Israel around the world.
So the synagogues that we're all heading to are all Orthodox synagogues?
This program is Orthodox synagogues. As mentioned, the Mizrahi, the RZA are religious, meaning Orthodox Zionists. So this program is that, but we are very hopeful and eager that in other synagogues as well, thought about Israel and connection to Israel should be strengthened too.
So there's kind of an inherent difficulty in having a Zionist organization around the world, is that if you're successful, people move to Israel. And therefore, the organization, the global organization outside of Israel, gets weaker because people actually come. So how do you deal with that? And what is going on? What is the situation now? I remember my grandparents, and we're talking many, many, many years ago, were very involved in Mizrahi. You don't hear so much about it anymore. Is what I just said part of the reason why its success has kind of undermined the organization?
Yeah, I think so. I think as Jews, especially those who are most passionate about religious Zionism, leave to fulfill their dreams, they leave behind frameworks and people who are also wonderful people, but maybe weren't at the forefront of those movements. And so definitely the movements in Chutz La'aretz need constant rejuvenation. And I think that's why people today are thinking about how they can strengthen So, for example, Rav Doron Perez's role within World Mizrachi in the last few years has been to strengthen that for the world. The RZA in America recently hired Rabbi David Israel to strengthen their efforts there. And on the one hand, continue to facilitate people making Aliyah. We work very closely with Nefesh B'Nefesh and Rav Josh Fass and the wonderful people he has. And on the other hand, to strengthen the consciousness and connection of those who do remain overseas. And so, yeah, that is a big challenge. And you are right that partly because of that challenge, there have been time periods where people are aware of what this is, what Mizrachi is, what religious Zionists in America are, but where they've been less active. And we're moving into a period where hopefully there's going to be much more activity.
So you're going to, I'm going to Beth Jacob Congregation in Beverly Hills, and you are going to?
I'm going to Yavne in Hancock Park and also to Share there. I'll be speaking in both places. And on Sunday, we'll both be taking part in a special breakfast program at Beth Jacob. So there's a lot of programming going on in Los Angeles. There's other speakers there as well. And as mentioned, in over 70 communities across the United States and then many others around the world.
So the panel topic that we have on Sunday morning, and I don't know if it's like that in the other places around the United States, is the future of religious Zionism and education. Now, you yourself are into education. Not everybody who's going. I mean, I do the radio and I'm a tour guide, which I guess makes me an educator as well. Just a brief look at the other speakers who are going. Many are rabbis, many are educators. So is that going to be the main topic, do you think, of people who are going out there? What do we do about the future here? What do you see? You're the moderator of the panel, so I can ask you this question because on Sunday morning you're going to be asking me the questions. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the future of religious Zionism?
Okay, so first of all, just about the programming. Mm-hmm. Each Shabbat program is being arranged by the shul and the speaker, so each one will have its own emphasis, although the goal is for all of them to be about Israel. And as mentioned, there are multiple Sunday programs, over 10, in different centers around the United States, and each one building their own program. We are just facilitating the speakers and connecting them with the various places. And yeah, I anticipate, and my impression is from communicating with the different places, that people are thinking about two things. One, our connection with Israel, and two, the future of the state of Israel, both in general and specifically the role of religious Zionism. And I think on both of those questions, again, since you're the moderator, I'm giving my answer, but I think on both of those questions, sometimes people see the part of the cup that's empty, that's missing, and there still is a lot to be done. But both the state of Israel and religious Zionism within the state have made huge strides over the last decades. The state of Israel is a formidable power within the world economic market, the scientific market, for sure security. The state of Israel is a country that stands very much in a strong way on its own, as opposed to in past decades where things were much more challenged. And religious Zionism, not only is it strong as a movement through its own organizations, but you see the degree to which the mainstream aspects of the state of Israel, whether it's politics, education, the head of the police force, meaning religious people who have a religious Zionist ideology, are playing a much more central role within the state. And religious Zionism as an ideology is much more recognized and central to how the state of Israel functions. And so there definitely is a lot more to accomplish, and we're focused not on resting on laurels, but on moving things forward. But there's a lot to be very proud of, a lot to be excited about, and a lot to serve as a basis for hope in the future.
So I know this might be a simple question, but I have listeners from all over the world and also from many different religions. How would you define religious Zionism?
That's an excellent question, which many of us who see ourselves as religious Zionists maybe don't need to define. So religion, of course, we know what that is. Religion is where a person does their best to try and serve God in the best possible way. And in Judaism, that's through the study of Torah and the commitment to mitzvot, to the commandments. Zionism, as a separate entity, is the belief in the importance of Jews returning to their homeland and strengthening and building that homeland for Jews. Religious Zionism isn't just the belief in both, but it's the belief that Zionism is an integral part of religion, and that the proper way one lives religiously is through a connection to Israel and through developing Israel. So religious Zionism is not just a belief in two ideas, but the belief in the two being connected to one another, that a proper form of religion expresses itself in our connection with the land and state of Israel, and that a proper connection to the land and state of Israel is one that finds its roots in religion. And beyond the world of ideology, definitely a connection with Israel that finds its roots in religion is going to be a more meaningful, stronger one. And unfortunately, we've seen over past decades how many of those whose connection to the state of Israel has not been founded on religion, the connection has been much weaker. And we see it in many, many ways. And so not only do we believe this connection, this between religion and Zionism is correct, it's also very, very important for the strength of the state of Israel.
I would think, and anybody who's going to come here, the panel should come anyway, because this is by no means everything that I want to say. But I would think actually this is our time. It's been 70 years, which is a significant number. The army, as you said, is strong. And with all that everyone's talking about, and nobody's minimizing Iran and Hezbollah or any of the dangers around us, you and I are not the ones who affect the protection of the state of Israel. We leave it in other people's hands, in Hashem's hands, and I believe that it will be okay. I don't know how, but we do believe that it will be okay. The question is what happens within this state right now. And as you said, and a lot of times I think it's kind of a replay of Joshua. And I'm talking about the original Joshua, bin Nun, the one who brings us into the land, because I was guiding on Passover also. He comes up a lot because that's our initial foray into the land of Israel is right before Passover. And a lot of those things that we talk about, the initial days, are happening on Passover. And he comes in and essentially it's Mila Hashem Elai. It's we're coming in, we're going to have to fight, we're going to have to conquer, we're going to have to plant and settle. But as long as we remember that Hashem is with us, and he will be with us when we're doing it for the right reasons, which is exactly, to some degree, I don't know, could we say that Yoshua ben Nun is the first religious Zionist in the sense of saying, now we're coming in as a nation. There's a nationalistic element here to the land and to the mitzvot and the things that we need to do on the land. On the other hand, if we're going to do this without understanding that this is what Hashem wants from us, from his people, for whatever reason, he's got his reasons, and if we're not constantly aware that he is with us, but only when we're doing it for the right reasons, then it's not going to work. So maybe now that the state has, as you said, has economic strength, has physical strength, high tech, whatever you want to call it, in a way that I don't even think the founders could have dreamt of 70 years ago. Maybe now is the time to put the Hashem back in here, not in a coercive kind of a manner, but in a nationalistic kind of a way.
Well, I agree with everything you said. As far as Yoshua ben Nun, I would definitely agree as religious science, but I don't know if he's the first. I would think the first one was the first Jew. And the first thing we know of what God said to Abraham was, go to Israel. The first thing we know about what God expects from Abraham religiously and in following him is to follow him to Israel. So definitely Yoshua ben Nun ranks. Right. But
I meant as a people, as a whole as a nation already, not just as individuals.
Well, maybe Moshe as far as the vision, though he didn't get in. Though he didn't get that in. And Yeshua as the one who's going to realize it. But as far as the major point that you mentioned, as far as now being the time, I agree, and I'd like to add another reason as to why. The challenge for religious Zionism always was that the people who were leading the state had an ideology that often intended to supplant religious Zionism, meaning to paint Judaism in a new form. It wasn't just that they were secular Jews, they believed in a secular ideology as an ideology as opposed to a religious ideology. And as we all know, in the first years of the State of Israel, there was strong opposition to religion and to religion's role. Now, there still are those who object, but their objections are very much from the extremes and from an ideology that's dying out. Most secular Jews in Israel today are either traditional or not anti-tradition. And so there's a vacuum today as far as what is the ideology that the state of Israel stands on. We just had a beautiful example of this, which again expressed all sides, the fact that the hospitals decided that chametz shouldn't be brought in on Pesach. Not because all the people running the hospitals are very careful about all the laws of Pesach, but the understanding that in a Jewish state, chametz should not be on display in public places on Pesach. And there definitely were those who objected, those very much today on the fringes who used to be more in the center. The ideology that was anti-religion within the state of Israel has become very much on the periphery. So now there's much more room for religion and religious Zionism to put its stamp on what the state of Israel stands for.
And then, of course, we have others in Israel who are religious without being Zionists, without taking part in some of the responsibilities that come with having a state. So the yeshiva that you are very involved with, Yeshivat HaKotel, is what's called a Hesder yeshiva, where the boys, not the overseas boys, although I'd like to ask you about how many of them do join, combine army service with also Torah study. So maybe a little bit about that aspect of your life.
Right. So just the backdrop. Sadly, many religious people in Israel don't identify fully or enough with the state of Israel. And that goes back to what we were talking about a few moments ago, which is the fact that the state of Israel was founded by many people who were anti-religious and not on the principles of religion we know and believe and are working towards the state becoming more connected to. And people today who are uncomfortable with the state of Israel is still a carryover of that. Thankfully, as a whole, those groups are more involved in the state than they once were. And we at Mizrahi, Religious Zionists of America, want to look for ways to try and involve them. And you'll note that a lot of the speakers on the list are people who are not necessarily at the forefront of a card-carrying, flag-waving religious Zionists, but people who feel strongly about Eretz Yisrael and people who hopefully we can work with. As far as the second part of your question, so yes, a Hesder yeshiva means they have an arrangement, a Hesder, with the government, where instead of doing the army or learning Torah, instead of having to make that choice, they commit themselves to a 5-year program where they do both those things on a very high level. And that's a beautiful expression of what religious Zionism stands for, which is our commitment to learning Torah, but also our commitment to strengthening the state of Israel and sacrificing ourselves. And sadly, happily, Hesder soldiers have been at the forefront of the fighting in the various wars of Israel and have paid the price. We're not sad about paying the price, but we're happy that we are bearing the responsibility along with everyone else. And so, yes, Yeshivat HaKotel sends its soldiers off, and also overseas boys. We do not encourage overseas boys to do the army, but Yeshivat HaKotel is unique in that the boys are integrated with Israelis, and a lot of boys seeking to stay in Israel and or do the army choose HaKotel, and many of them go to the army. We recently had a draft where a lot of these boys entered the army, and beautiful videos of that day I can share with you. And so we are definitely educating our overseas boys as well for a connection with Israel, for a commitment to Israel, whether they choose to move here or not, whether they choose to do the army or not, but to feel connected with the state of Israel as a central part of growing religiously.
Right. So my youngest son actually is in the 5th year of his Hesder program here in Alon Shvut in Har Etzion Yeshiva, not in HaKotel. And it's not just bearing the responsibility as part of the state, but it's also meeting other people. There's no way, one of the things that makes religious Zionism also, in a sense, we expose our children to both worlds. We expose our children to both the world of Torah and to the secular world, if you will, or to the open world where people work and people go out and people go into the army. And with that, for some of us, comes that, I would even use the word danger, because the kids are open then. They're not sheltered anymore. It's easier to perhaps to keep the kids sheltered. But it's been said before that it's the hyphen. If you have religious Zionism and a hyphen in the middle, the hyphen is the most important part of those two words, because it is bridging it. It's not being just religious and just believing in the state, but it's actually bringing those two things in together. So what do you say then when also in educating your own children? I've known your wife, who's amazing, incidentally, for many years, and she herself is a top educator. How do we do that, especially in a world where everything is coming into our children all the time because of the internet and information? It's really impossible to protect our kids anymore. How do we find that balance?
It definitely is a challenge. Anyone who wants to raise their children with values that are not what the mainstream dominant culture of the world believes faces a bigger challenge today, when that mainstream culture is streamed into people's minds, day and night. And I think it hinges on both having clarity to oneself of what a person's core values are and believing in them strongly and clearly, not insecurely, in a way that children can at least see an alternative role model of people who have clarity about what their values are, and educating children in a clear way by example of what our values are. As much as we feel there's what to learn from the world around us, helping children understand that there's a big difference between us and the world around us, and that they should be proud and understand why they should be proud of the values we have that we're serving for them as an example of. So it's even more important today. We can't rely as much on a child just being surrounded all the time by people with the same values. We have to give a good role model to children of ourselves as people who have clarity on what our real values are. So if we're people who see ourselves basically as regular Zionists who happen to keep a few commandments, then our children are going to pick up the first key part, which is we're regular Zionists like everybody else, and maybe we do or don't keep a few commandments. That's maybe cream on the cake that we either take or don't take. But if we define our core identity as religious people, and we see and present Zionism as an expression of core religious values, but the core religious values are what make us us, then there's a better chance of them being able to see what it means to be a religious person who's also a Zionist. Noteworthy, it's not Zionistic religion, it's religious Zionism, where if you don't have the religious core, as we said earlier, the Zionism loses its true meaning.
I think a good 95% of what you just said, incidentally, could be picked up by my Christian listeners for the same struggle that they have in educating their children to stay with the God program, even though there's so much else out there. It's what we do as parents to a great degree in the environment that we set up for our kids that is going to make the difference. So I think the messaging of religious Zionism, even though it's particular to this place, and that's the Zionism part, is something that can be applied to a lot of people around the world who are looking to the next generation. What kind of world are we going to have? Are the battles, and this is something that I deeply believe, that a lot of the battles around the world are religious wars, whether people want to face that or not. It's God people versus not God people, or how God is expressed in the world. But it's very challenging here to build a state. We don't want to be coercive. We have public spaces now. What do you do with the public spaces? What do you do with different institutions? What do you do with government? What do you do with hospitals, as you said, which are open to everybody? As the chametz issue, as not bringing leavened bread in during the Passover week was out. And also, we have a party that is more or less a religious Zionist party. Bayit Yehudi are the things that they do. Are we happy with them? But there are people wearing kippot, or women not wearing kippot, but who are observant Jews in all the kinds of different parties. Are we happy with their behavior? Do they express what we want them to express? So it's very challenging, very exciting, and very frightening, I think, all at once.
Yeah, like you're saying, and this is relevant to all people. It's a lot easier to maintain your ideology if you're separated from the world and don't believe in the need to engage it. You can build your own framework and interact with the world only on a utilitarian level. But if you see yourself, whatever religion you are, as responsible to build the world around you, to engage the world so you can impact it, well, as soon as you're engaging the world, you're interacting with people with other values and involved in the kind of things that aren't narrowly religious, state building and society building.
Honesty in business, so many things.
Right, in so many levels. Right. And so it's even more important that your values are very strong and very clear. And sadly, the religious community struggles with these issues. And as I said before, and I think this is a real core part of it, if a person sees their identity as Zionistic first and religious second, then it's very easy to just want to take the first and go with it, because the second is a real responsibility and mission and requires a lot of hard work, just as the first does, but the second also does. And I think we as a religious Zionistic community, or whatever your listeners see as their values, have to make sure that we, by example, model for our children how our core values are important to us. If a person themselves has religion as a write-off within their framework, they can't possibly expect their children to take it more seriously. So it's even more important today that the values be something lived as our core values.
Okay, so Mizrahi/70for70.org, is that the...
It's also on the RZA website. It's on both. You can find it on both, and you can see there a list of speakers, description of the program, list of the community is going out to, and this is probably going to evolve into a speakers bureau on a more consistent basis, so we can continue this effort as long as many other efforts, which I'll also mention that in over 100 shuls in the United States and many more around the world, Mizrahi is launching a Dvar Torah booklet, which does consist already of Divrei Torah from the Prime Minister, Chief Rabbis, other educators from Israel. And this, not just this week, but in future weeks, will be a good way for Jews around the world to think not only about Israel, but of the Torah coming from Israel and the guidance coming from Israel on a weekly basis, keeping people connected, which is really the goal.
I remember reading just a few months ago, I don't even know anymore, time is going so quickly, the Yeshiva University, which is really the flagship of, let's say, modern Orthodoxy, which is not religious Zionism. You don't have that political or nationalistic element in there. The flagship university in New York. So they used to be the ones to send out teachers into the modern Orthodox world. And now when they need, they're looking more towards Israel. So Israel's already become that center, moved the center, that shift of, as you said, engaging with the world while keeping traditions and the Torah values. Israel is already the center of that. And I think it's beautiful, this idea to send, I think almost all the speakers are coming from Israel. I looked through the list. There were just a couple that don't actually live full-time in Israel. To sending us out, as you said, Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, right? From Zion shall come Torah, especially for the next Shabbat, which is the Shabbat before the birthday of the State of Israel, the 70th birthday of the State of Israel. I know that I'm tremendously honored to be a part of this program, and I'm delighted that you took a few minutes from a very busy schedule after Pesach, after Passover, to sit with me and explain really to my listeners about Mizrahi, about religious Zionism. I know that you've shed some new light for me, and I'm sure you have for my listeners as well.
Thank you. Thank you for spending the time and for being part of the program. And we look forward to continuing to work together to strengthen the goals that your organization has, that we have, which is the land of Israel, and strengthening our relationship with it. We're lucky that we live in a time where we can develop this.
Absolutely. Okay, Rabbi Reuven Tarragon, who I will see next week in Los Angeles. So safe travels. And thank you, everybody. I've got a few more things to say, but I will let Rabbi Tarragon go. I will be right back.
Hi, this is Josh Haston, host of Israel Uncensored here on the Land of Israel Network. Tune in every Monday to hear the latest news coming from Israel, plus interviews with top Israeli politicians, media personalities, and activists, all doing their part to counter anti-Israel propaganda and BDS. Don't miss a minute. Be sure to stream or download all of the amazing programming from our wide range of hosts here at the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com.
Hi, everybody. Eve, I am back. It's still April 8th, the 23rd day of Nisan, Sunday, a beautiful day in Jerusalem, and I hope you enjoyed the few minutes with Rabbi Reuven Tarragon and explaining a little bit about the program that, once again, I am so excited to be a part of for the next week. Just a few minutes of personal chit-chat. I hope you all really had a wonderful Pesach. I ran 2 buses for One Israel Fund, and one of them was to Har Bracha, to Mount Gerizim, which was really, really a very intense day, going to the national park there and seeing they have the remnants of a building. It's the western wall of the actual building of their temple, the Samaritan temple, from the 5th century BCE, which was built as an exact replica of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem at the time. We're talking about the times during the Persian period, the times of, let's say, Ezra and Nehemiah. So we don't have, as far as we know, or as far as we have found, who knows if it hasn't been destroyed by some of the people who are occupying right now the Temple Mount, but we don't have the remnants of anything much that we know of our first temple, yet there is an exact replica sitting on Mount Gerizim and of the Western Wall. Remember, when you go to the Kotel, when you go to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, you're not going to the Western Wall of the temple. You're going to the Western Wall of the supporting plaza that held up the Temple Mount. So I find that particularly moving and exciting. We looked around there. We spoke to one of the Samaritans, one of the priests, the Samaritan priests, and in their museum, which was also very interesting, a human look into the first temple times and into some of what they still do. They still do a Passover sacrifice, and we went to the area and they explained it to us. So you see little hints of Judaism, of what we still do in there, other things that we do not do anymore, or maybe used to, or of course they think they're the real Jews. We went to Yeshivat Har Bracha, which was where Rav Itamar Ben Gal, who was murdered a few weeks ago, that's where he studied, and we went to the winery in Har Bracha, and it was all together, well, of course, the overlook to Shechem, the overlook to modern-day Nablus, and Torah, Torah, Torah everywhere, the blessings and the curses and the parable of Yotam, and so many things in that area. You could just spend so much time there. We had a day, and then another day in the Binyamin region, in Ofra, seeing where the Ammona people, where Ammona, the town that was destroyed about 15 months ago, where it was, driving through there, seeing some of the beautiful part of the community in Ofra, a home for kids with special needs, and then moving our way to the Shiloh block and seeing Amichai, which is where the Ammona people are now starting to move into. So from destruction to hopefully some kind of renewal and rebuilding, an unbelievable view. Also from Rimonim out to the Jordan Valley near Jericho, where we came in as a people with Joshua. Could have had that discussion with Rabbi Tarragon about whether Abraham is actually the first Jew or the first monotheist. That in itself is a fascinating discussion, but definitely talking a whole lot about Joshua and about my people coming into the land oh so long ago, and the fact that now we're back. So I had a really great week and also spent some family time. Did get some bad news, and that is what I'm going to ask you all to pray for. A few months ago, you might remember that I interviewed Simcha Gluck about his business, about Fresh Biz. And a couple of years ago, I had interviewed Simcha about in a very raw interview, about some of the major issues that he and his wife Rachel had in having children, major fertility issues and everything that they went through for over a decade. And thank God they had their third son at the end of December. I was at the Brit in January. Many of us here on the Land of Israel Network are quite close to them. Well, they got some very bad news right before the holiday that their second son is very, very sick. I mean, very, very sick. We're talking about cancer in a 3-year-old that has spread. And so I'm going to ask all of you in some way to please pray for Yakir Ephraim, the son of Rachel Devorah and Simcha. Okay, I don't care what language you pray in. I don't care how you pray. In addition to praying for his full recovery, do something good, do something kind. Let's shift the world just a little bit to the side of good. So give a little bit of extra charity. Don't lose your temper when you're tempted to. In some ways, just act a little bit better, thinking of his recovery, of the balance. Once again, we talk about this all the time. The forces of good, the forces of evil in the world. And let us just make this world a kinder and better place. Thinking about his full recovery, it is, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this, and he needs to get better. So Yakir Ephraim, the son of Rachel Devorah and Simcha, when somebody is sick in Judaism, you actually pray for them using the mother's name. I'm just throwing in the Simcha because it can hurt, and to give them also strength in helping him get better, and with their new little baby and their 5-year-old son as well. So all of us here at the Land of Israel Network, our hearts and prayers and thoughts and good deeds all towards this right now, and I would bring you into our greater family as well, and ask that you do so as well. And so enjoy the spring wherever you are. I, again, leaving for Los Angeles tomorrow morning, and will be there for the next few days. Would love to see any of you if you happen to be in Los Angeles. Not that I'm saying that you shouldn't go on Shabbat and hear Rabbi Reuven Tarragon or Rav Stav and there are 4 rabbis and yours truly who are going to be in Los Angeles for next Shabbat and for Sunday morning. But wherever you may live, go to their website, Mizrahi70for70.org. And if one of these events is happening in your community, join us in celebrating the rebirth of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, the 70th birthday of Medinat Israel, of the state of Israel. So going off now to pack. Hope to hear from you. Hope that you're with us in every sense of the word. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Thanks once again to Tabitha and to Ben and everybody at the network. And it's great to be back. Take care, everybody. Goodbye for now.